Yes, great. Recording. My name is Karthik Balasubramanian. I'm the chair of the Multimodal Accessibility Advisory Council, the MAAC. We are the mayor's voice or the mayoral task force focused on advocating for folks with disabilities around the district. And so I want to welcome you to our February meeting. And yeah, so we generally start off with introductions. So I'll just kind of pass around the baton so folks can do introductions, and then we can go ahead and get started with our meeting. So Adrian, I'll pass it to you first. And if you can introduce yourself and then pass it on to someone else, that'd be great.
Hey, how you doing? I'm Adrian Morrison. I joined the MAAC board because, I'm not joining the board, but I participate with the MAAC board to help safety for people with disabilities, particularly walking up and down the streets. I've had some concerns about scooters and bikes and things of that nature. I'm a civil rights attorney with the federal government. I've lived in DC for about 15 years now. So I've been here for a minute. That's pretty much all I have to say. I can pass it to, I'll just go according to how things are with the display. Sumathi.
Hi, I'm you can call me Sue. I am excited to be participating today. I'm hopeful member of the MAAC board soon. I really like to participate here because I am a person with a disability and I am a user of all kinds of transport options within DC. I've lived in DC since 2010 and have not driven since I was about 25 years old, which is almost 20 years ago. So I do rely on public transit. I rely on being able to bike and walk around the city. So I am very invested in making sure that we can ensure safety for pedestrians of all kinds. Thanks.
And if you can pass it on to someone else, that'd be great.
Sorry, that's what I meant to do. Lakeisha. Maybe we don't have Lakeisha. Yeah, maybe Zachary.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. This is Zach Smith. I am with the District Department of Transportation, also liaison to the MAAC. I will pass it to Heather Foote.
Did you all hear me? Did I not come through? Oh, okay.
Yes, we can hear you now.
All right. Hi, this is Lakeisha Love, the Chief Transportation Equity Inclusion Officer for DDOT.
Great. Maybe we can pass it on to Heather.
Heather, I think you're on mute.
Okay, found it. Sorry. Heather Foote, Pedestrian Advisory Council.
Great. And if you can pass it on, I think we've got no, Leonard. Leonard, can you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Leonard Stevens. I'm from Project Action, covering for Thomas Mangrum, and I want to hear about all of it for the rest of the time, so I won't be on very long because I got something to do on Valentine's Day as well.
Nice. And I think lastly, we've got Susie.
I'm going to give this to Susie. She can unmute herself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great.
Yeah, would you mind introducing yourself, Susie?
Oh, I'm Susie McFadden Resquern with the DC Office of Disability Rights. I am the ADA Compliance Specialist for Public Works.
Great. Thanks so much. So I think we've got everyone. And we've got Neha as well, who's the administrative assistant for the MAAC. So unfortunately, we don't have quorum today. Or actually, Neha, do you want to just say hi?
Oh yeah, I'll say hi. Hi, I'm Neha, and I am the admin assistant for the MAAC, and I work with Karthik on some other projects. So I'm here to take notes and to help everybody with if they have any problems with the software.
Great. Thanks so much. So I think, so unfortunately, we don't have quorum. We won't have an official meeting until we do. But I think what we can do is start off with some discussion. So a couple things. So we've got the Olmsted Task Force is on the agenda. Susie, do you know if Peter is able to make it today?
I'm not sure if he's going to make it or not.
Would you mind talking a little bit about the Olmsted Task Force?
Well, I don't know much about it. I know that we're having a meeting coming up on February the 26th, and I can put that link out if you need it.
Yeah, that'd be great. That'd be great if you can put that link in the chat. We're hoping to send one person from the MAAC to that meeting. And can you maybe just describe the Olmsted kind of big picture on what the Olmsted kind of process is and kind of why we're doing it and what we're doing?
Well, the Olmsted is a piece of the ADA that requires integration for people into the community, people with various types of disabilities. And it also requires that they have access to, in our case, transportation, that they're integrated into the community, that they have all the opportunities like employment opportunities and things like that. So I'm not a member of the Olmsted. We have various people in our office who is assigned to oversee that. I'm not one of them. I think right now Peter has been assigned that role since our previous attorney advisor left. So that has never been one of my roles, but it is an ADA requirement and ODR must implement it and oversee a plan for the Olmsted. And in our case, we must make sure that transportation is available to people with disabilities. And I will put that in the chat, and I hope you all can join so that you can give input and learn more about what it is.
Great. Yeah, thanks so much. And yeah, definitely encourage everyone to go. And we're hoping to send at least somebody from the MAAC to meeting, and then maybe even to join the task force. So yeah, and if you're interested in joining the task force, Peter is the point person, Susie's colleague, that I can put you in touch with as well. Zachary, go for it.
Oh, hey, everyone. I think Susie gave a great sort of overview of what it is. I'll just add that from our perspective, DDOT is a member of the Olmsted Plan Working Group. So the agencies meet on a quarterly basis to discuss how best to integrate persons with disabilities within the community. I know in the past there have been different town hall meetings that the group has also had to get feedback from the public on updates to the plan. And I believe now the group is sort of working on what those metrics will be for the next year. So it should cover from 2025 to 2027.
Great. Great. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Zach. Yes. And then next, I wanted to do a quick touch on the website that we've now gotten kind of resurrected. Neha, would you mind sharing your screen and just giving folks a tour of the website and what they can find on there?
Yeah. Yes, for sure. Let me pull it up. Yeah, so this is like what the home screen looks like. People know what we're doing. We have a link for meetings, meeting all the members of the council, and there's meeting recaps, kind of like a history on how the MAAC came to be and what you guys are doing. And if you go back up, there is a more in-depth of here are all the members, and then if there's a vacancy. And then if people want to look at the meetings or anything, they can click here, and it's there. Last week's will be up soon, and then past meetings are there as well. And at the bottom of the homepage, there is a link to contact, and this will be forwarded to Karthik or myself, and then we can get more information on any questions that anybody has. Yeah.
Yep, and you can get to that with MAACDC.org. And then also, can you so we've got minutes and also previous meetings as well. Can you show where those are? Yeah.
So like right here, there's a link. All the meetings are uploaded to YouTube. So if you click on the link, it'll take you to a YouTube page, and all the past meetings are there.
Perfect. And can you actually, I think when you clicked it, it didn't actually open.
Let me switch what screen I'm sharing. Right here, yes. All the meetings are there. If anyone misses any of them.
Perfect. Great. Yeah, so we've got stuff up online as well, and then also we also have our old Twitter account as well that's up. Can you share that as well, Neha? So if folks want to keep up, we're slowly trying to kind of rebuild some of our kind of channels that we had lost access to. So it's kind of a way for us to stay in touch with folks. Yep. So I'll actually just drop this in the chat as well. So it's Accessible DC is our handle on Twitter. Oh, you're on mute, Neha.
It's twitter.com/accessibledc. All the tweets are there, and it's active.
Perfect. Great. So those are a couple things. I was hoping to have a kind of discussion about the larger goals or kind of planning meeting so that we can kind of plan out what we hope to achieve as the MAAC this upcoming year. But we don't have quorum, which is a bummer. Yes. So I'm not sure if we, I'm not sure kind of the best way. So Kelly is able to join in. She just said that she was running late. So maybe what we can do is for the moment, maybe for the next 10 minutes or so, just open up the floor to hear from folks who are not part of the MAAC about what you're hoping, kind of what you see in the district as potential barriers to you getting around, or for other folks who are disabled to get around the district, and what you'd like to see advocacy on, or kind of what we could and should be advocating for. So I'll just kind of open this up to anyone, Leonard, Heather, Adrian, Sue, and then also other folks too. other folks who are agency members. So if you've got things that you'd like to share as well. But yeah, I mean, I think we can just kind of have an open, wide-ranging discussion until we've got quorum.
Right now I got one because it's based on the issues about cutting all the bus lines and also WMATA's metro access. That's the only concern I have so far.
Great. Can you talk a little bit more about that, Leonard?
I think the route's going to be rearranged because of the fiscal year, because of the budget cuts as well.
Yeah.
So I know a lot of bus routes I live nearby, like the 80 and the G2 bus, they run off almost 24/7. But what's going to be the cause out of it during those fiscal year for it?
Mm-hmm. So, so reduction in service or cuts to bus routes like the 80 and the G2 buses are two things that you're concerned about.
Right.
Got it. Is there anything else that anything else, like, are there anything else that you wanted to add to it? But that's great. So we're definitely, buses and bus movement around the city is definitely something that we care deeply about, and we'll definitely be working on this year. But anything else about bus services that you wanted to bring up?
Not for at this moment.
Okay, great. All right, thanks so much, Leonard. Anybody else? Other folks? Oh yeah, go for it. Heather, go for it.
So we've at the PAC somewhat gone through a priority setting process, and several issues have emerged, a couple of them on which we haven't really seen progress when we set these as goals last year at the time of the performance oversight hearings. And one is safe accommodations, which I know you've had, and we're going to be given the experience that Jay Swiderski and I had at a MAAC meeting, listening to your a presentation that was made to the MAAC. We're looking for somebody different this coming year to make a presentation on that issue.
Yep.
Another is EV charging cords across sidewalks. That's something that we were disappointed in back in 2021. We sent comments on what was supposed to be draft DDOT guidelines, and we never heard back. To be generous, and I think this is the case, there was a tremendous staff turnover for handling that responsibility. And I'm pleased to say that we've had, through the NEVI process, we've contacted a couple DDOT people, and so we're going to have a call next week on the EV charging cord issue. And I know that the MAAC, and this, Karthik and Zach, may be a mischaracterization, but my perception was that you folks signed off on it, and perhaps because people with disabilities are really watching out for these things. But I've had personally 2 recent experiences that left me quite worried, and there's a real big expansion coming up of the charging stations.
Yeah.
And the term that I've heard a couple times from DDOT folks is that their preference is that they not be across sidewalks. So that's something we want to look in. And then a third item is we've been supportive of speed cameras, safety cameras, as one of the ways to address speeding. And we had a session Monday night with the fellow at DDOT who's in charge of that. It was very extensive, detailed. And my big concern, which I'm going to be expressing to him in some follow-up comments, is that for those people not familiar with speed camera functions, and especially those who are not going to be able to very easily go into a very good website that is pretty much brand new. I was very impressed what I've seen so far. People are not necessarily going to know about it, or it requires a certain level of knowledge to maneuver through that website. But what I really like about the website is that it puts traffic cameras in a broader context of different ways to slow down traffic. That's it.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Would you mind putting that website in the chat, Heather?
Sure.
I was able to attend the PAC meeting where the DDOT representative presented, and I was also very impressed, actually. And speed cameras, we know, slow down drivers, at least for some period of time. And speed is the killer, or is one of the main factors in fatalities. So this is a tool in our toolbox, or in the kind of transportation toolbox, to make our streets safer. So that's definitely something that we're concerned about too. So yeah, this is great. Thanks for bringing all of those things up, and we welcome kind of any. We'd be happy if there are things that are coming out of the MAAC or out of the PAC. We'd be happy to bring it up here when we have quorum, and co-sign once y'all have or anything that y'all have put out. So great. Yeah. So more. Oh, Peter. Hello, Peter. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Yes. Hi, everyone. Peter Steffen. I'm staff attorney, or excuse me, attorney advisor for the District Office of Disability Rights. Thanks for having me.
Yes, and so Susie gave us a little bit. Susie and Zach both gave us a little context on Olmsted, but would you mind actually talking a little bit, giving a little bit more, and specifically about what the Olmsted and what the task force that you're hoping will do, and timelines, etc.
Yeah, thanks so much. And apologies if I'm repeating information, please stop me. So the district has an Olmsted plan, and it has had it for years. We are in the process of renewing and revising it. So I think what my goal is in heading up that effort is to receive significant community engagement to set goals for that renewed plan, and they might be different than the ones that were there in the past, along with benchmarks that are both realistic but also ambitious, and then setting metrics that accurately measure those goals and benchmarks along the way. So the plan is to develop the plan over the course of this year, and once we develop it and finalize it, it will be for the next 3 years. And so the task force is an effort to engage, not just one-off, right? Like, so often we have agencies who say, well, here's what we're proposing, send us your comments and feedback, and we'll think about it. That's not enough in this case, I think. And so what we want to do is have a series of town halls. There are 3 of them that are planned. The first one is already set, scheduled for February 26th. So if you haven't already gotten an invite, please let me or Karthik know. I sent the invite to Karthik to invite the entire MAAC, and the PAC and BAC I need to also invite. The more the merrier, because the greater the community input, I think the better the final product will be, and the more relevant. But in addition to those kind of one-off events, I think it's important to have a dialogue with the stakeholders who are interested in around what the goals should be, and all the details of the plan. So in digging in a very substantive way. So anyone who is interested in that, you don't have to come to the town hall, but if you, either way, if you're interested, let me know, and I will add you to our task force list. It's more of an opportunity to provide asynchronous feedback and conversation. By that I mean like emailing with the group and with me, and maybe setting up virtual meetings and the like, to try to have a real brain trust and feedback that is grounded in the people who live this, these services and programs.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Peter. Really appreciate it. So, and Kevin, actually welcome. would you mind quickly introducing yourself?
Wow. Hey, can you?
Yeah, there we go. Yes, we can hear you.
Nice, but I guess my mic is. Hi, everyone. My name's Kevin Whitfield. I work for the DC Council. I'm the committee director for the Committee on Transportation and the Environment.
Perfect. Great. Thanks so much for being here, Kevin. We don't have quorum, unfortunately. This is something that we've been working with MODA on, long-standing issue. So unfortunately, we can't do anything official. But right now, what we're essentially doing is just we was hoping to have a kind of wider-ranging discussion on the kind of the goals of the goals for this upcoming year, and also just kind of have a general open mic for folks talking about their own experiences with a disability in DC, or kind of the things that they would hope that we would focus on as well. So right now, open mic. Once open mic is done, I can share a little bit about the report card that we've developed, and also and just solicit feedback. We've got two new folks that unfortunately one is delayed, and one wasn't able to make it with a committee of 6. Even with a few absences and even with one vacancy, it's hard. So I'll continue to open up. I'll continue the open mic if folks want to hop in and kind of talk about things that they would hope that we can advocate for, or kind of things that they're personally struggling with. This can all kind of go into a document where we can hopefully, with quorum, I'll cross my fingers for next month, we'll be able to draft a plan.
No.
I'm happy to jump in. I've been very grateful for the new protected bike lanes on Pennsylvania. I live in Southeast, over by the Potomac Avenue Metro, and so the new bike lanes up Pennsylvania Avenue Southeast have been very helpful, and I appreciate those. Though one of the unintended consequences, I think, that has come from those, especially as somebody with a disability riding on those bike lanes, is that there are people who park on the outside of the bike lanes and then just step right into the bike lane at sort of, especially where there's a lot of commercial, right around Eastern Market, and then over by where like Frager's is, and then also up, closer to the Capitol around like 3rd and 4th Street. By the post office and the UPS. And so I find that very challenging with people just walking on the bike lanes. And I'm wondering, whether something we might be able to advocate for is just something that is a deterrent for people to walk across the bike lanes, because they just step out in front of cars. So there's really no warning that folks are going to step into the bike lane, or some way to sort of deter them or push them over to the crosswalks or something like that. So we know that there are folks that might be coming. So that would be something that it would be awesome to advocate for, especially because I can't really see them coming, especially when it's dark out as well. So.
Yep. So more education around new protected bike lanes. Great. Great. Other kind of continuing on open mic. Other folks want to add anything? Anything else that folks wanted to bring up? Otherwise, what I can do, so I know folks have seen, some folks have seen variations on this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a link in the chat and also share my screen with our report card, MAACDC.link/report card data. Yes, here we go. So I've just put that in the chat, and I'm also going to share my screen and kind of walk folks through this. This is kind of been an ongoing we're continuing to refine this document. And hopefully once we have quorum, we can kind of set it in stone. New members haven't been able to vote on it either. So this is essentially, can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Still
Okay,
loading.
perfect. Great. Yes. So I just dropped the link in the chat to this document. But essentially, this is a set of 5, and that was kind of an arbitrary number. So, so once we have quorum, we can also change the number of metrics and also the content of these metrics. But these are the 5 that were that we had brainstormed last year as 5 metrics that we could measure on a 0 to 100 scale that kind of capture things that we care about, and if we made progress, if there were numbers that were higher, we are moving towards a more equitable and just city for folks with disabilities. So the first metric was the percentage of intersections with accessible pedestrian signals, or APS signals. These are those buttons that you can press that announce kind of what street you can and when you can cross. These are also known as audible walk signals. Number 2 is a percentage of intersections that comply with DC safety laws regarding sight lines. This is basically, and we can go into more detail in each one of these, but DC safety laws regarding sight lines, essentially they're different in front of intersections and crosswalks. There should be enough room for drivers to see people who are at these intersections. So for pedestrians who are crossing the street at either a crosswalk or an intersection, there should not be parking anywhere. It kind of varies between 15 or 25 feet, depending on or 5 feet for driveways, because if there's a parked car that is close enough to a crosswalk or an intersection, then the driver would not be able to see any pedestrians that are about to cross the street, and that is a recipe for injury and death. There was a horrific crash in New York City where a child was hit by a tow truck, specifically because there were people parked right up to the stop sign, and this is something that many cities around the country have kind of really taken to heart. Hoboken, New Jersey, which has achieved Vision Zero. The Vision Zero is where there are no deaths due to no deaths on the street due to traffic violence. One of their signature initiatives was daylighting, what's called daylighting, or essentially making sure that there are no parked cars in front of these various intersections and crosswalks, etc. DC has laws, but there are many instances where those are not followed, not just by drivers, but also by the district government themselves. The parking is placed in places where it should not be. So that's one of our metrics as well. The third metric is the number of center line miles. This is a fancy way of saying the number of street miles on DC's high injury network. This is the set of streets that are the most deadly and injury-inducing streets in DC, with the design speed, where design speed basically means not the posted speed limit, but how fast the planners were planning on or created the street for car movement. And 20 miles an hour is a speed in which pedestrians are much safer or much less likely to be killed at than 25 or certainly 30 or 35 miles an hour. So we're looking at that design speed number. The fourth metric, percentage of intersections that do not permit left turn conflicts with pedestrians. Basically, kind of the way to think about this is oftentimes when you're crossing the street and the oncoming traffic has a green ball rather than a green arrow, you have the right of way as a pedestrian, but the cars who are turning also may think that they've got the right of way. So again, this is kind of a recipe for death and injury, and we want to what's called deconflict our streets as much as possible, so that we have fewer and fewer instances where cars feel or drivers of cars are able to take the life of a pedestrian in the left turn, doing left turns. And left turns are one of the most dangerous movements a car can make, just because there's oncoming car traffic, but then also may not even be looking for pedestrians. And this is a very difficult maneuver for many drivers who may or may not even be paying attention. And this is, again, kind of a recipe for death and injury that we want to reduce as much as possible. And then lastly, our fifth metric, percentage of emergency evacuation route centerline miles with a 24/7 bus lane. Over 40% of DC, or nearly 40% of DC, doesn't own a car or lives in zero car households. And people with disabilities are twice as likely to live in a zero car household than folks who are not disabled. So we can confidently say, or we can likely say, that the median or the average person with a disability doesn't drive in DC. And so when our road network is clogged with cars, we're completely reliant on non-car modes like the bus. And especially in a situation where there are trains that may or may not be functioning underground, we are really, really at the mercy of our transportation network. And if buses are just stuck behind cars, basically we've kind of set ourselves up for a nightmare scenario where people who have cars can speed out of the city, and then people who don't have cars are left trapped in the city. And that's something that we think is a major equity issue. And then also there's a general case for bus lanes, just as an efficiency point. A bus lane carries way more people than it can move a lot more people per hour than a general travel lane that might get clogged by people who are just single people driving in a big car that otherwise could have been used much more efficiently by and equitably by people who are riding the bus. So anyway, these are five of the metrics that we've come up with. 5 is also not a magic number. This is just, and we had brainstormed some more metrics as well, and some of which, so some of which actually deal with safe accommodation. So one was percent of approved traffic control plans that allow the closure of sidewalks. We had a discussion after a man was killed Rhode Island Avenue back in February of 2023, we found out that that area where the man was killed, the man was walking in the street because the sidewalk had been closed on an arterial street, arterial being the biggest type of street. And it turned out that there was a DC water project, and DDOT had actually approved that, approved this this non-accommodation, basically approved the shutting down of the sidewalk, which should have been done as a very, very last resort. But it became clear that this is not being done as a last resort. It's kind of very common practice. So this is where we wanted to, so this is something that came up as a potential metric of kind of percentage of approved traffic control plans that allows the closure of the sidewalk. Because if this number is very high, then we know that this is not being done as a last resort. This is being done as a matter of course. It's a routine thing that is dangerous. It's already resulted in a death last year, and also injuries that we may not even be aware of. So that's a metric that we had brainstormed. The data, getting this data would have been a little bit cumbersome, which is one of the reasons why this had to be moved. And feel free, I'm just, if anyone has any questions along the way, feel free to just jump in and ask. Or if you've got comments, or questions or anything, please feel free to ask clarification questions or comments, critiques, disagreements. All of that is very welcome right now at this stage. Then another of the metrics, percent of lane miles dedicated to parking private vehicles. Lane miles dedicated to parking private vehicles, one parked car. Parking is by far the worst use of streets in terms of efficiency in moving people, because one car can block an entire lane. So a bus lane, you can move thousands of people per hour. But if there's one car that's parked in that bus lane, then that effectively negates the usefulness of that bus lane completely. So basically this is the worst way to use streets in terms of efficiency, actually moving people from one place to another. And that is kind of one reason why he's here. Is like, okay, if we are the city that cares about equity, people who don't drive or can't drive or don't own a car are disproportionately less affluent, more likely to be disabled, more likely to live in Ward 7 and 8, more likely to be people of color, than allocating our street space to the least useful, least equitable form of usage is something that we should be moving away from. So that was kind of the thought here. Percent of scooters blocking the public right-of-way that are addressed within 24 hours. Scooters can be a menace on the sidewalk when they're either in operation or not in operation. So when they're not in operation, if they're just strewn on the sidewalk, then that can be deeply problematic for anyone using a wheelchair trying to get from point A to point B on a sidewalk. So that's something that that the companies, the scooter companies, we definitely want them to be dealing with ASAP, and want to be incentivizing their riders to not or penalizing the riders who do park the scooters just blocking a sidewalk. So this needs to be addressed quickly. Getting this data would also be tricky, and that's why this is down here in the appendix. The other The other aspect of scooters is operation on the sidewalk. We definitely don't want scooters being operated on the sidewalk because people walking on the sidewalk, especially scooters that are not limited to 10 miles an hour, it's going 15 or 20 miles an hour on a sidewalk is dangerous and is scary, quite frankly, to folks who are users of the sidewalk and maybe moving slower. So that's something that we had also had discussions about. This is a metric: percent of cars with at least $1,000 in moving violations that have not yet been seized. This had come from a discussion with the BAC and the PAC, the Bicycle Advisory Council and the Pedestrian Advisory Council. We worked on a joint statement last year, recognizing that people who are reckless drivers are the most dangerous drivers and the most likely to kill. This came after there was a reckless driver who killed, I think, at least 3 people on Rock Creek Parkway last year, and had many violations. That if we had been able to seize that vehicle, we would have been able to separate that reckless driver from the vehicle, or essentially taking the loaded gun away from the person who has shown themselves to not be responsible in operating the vehicle. And this is something that DPW, Department of Public Works, we're hoping would focus on and actually start prioritizing. It's come to light that they don't prioritize their towing operation at all based on anything. And we think that DPW should be targeting the worst of the worst. We're less worried about folks with 90-day resident parking permit parking violations versus someone with thousands of dollars in moving violations that is a menace and a terror on our street. So those are cars that we want to get seized. Then disparity between highway spending and sidewalk spending. This has become clear. We had a great meeting last month from folks with the sidewalk or who are working on sidewalk planning. The total budget was $5.5 million for sidewalks, and then I think for their particular initiative within sidewalks, and the total sidewalk budget is $14 million. But there are certain capital projects that push over $100 million. The capital projects being the biggest projects. So, for example, the Frederick Douglass Memorial Bridge, a beautiful bridge, also costs nearly $500 million. And that's where there's this major disparity. Yes, there's some there are paths on that bridge, but that is almost 30 times as much spending as we were spending on sidewalks in a given year. And that's something that we really want to kind of highlight again. If we care about equity, we really need to be investing and putting our money where our mouth is. This disparity between spending $14 million total for across the district versus potentially spending $14 million on a single project that by and large benefits people who don't even live in the district, who are just driving in. So that's something that we had discussed as well. I'm going to pause here. I've just been talking straight for probably the last 20 minutes, and just open it up to any folks. Kelly, hello, welcome.
Hi there.
Hello. Would you mind introducing yourself?
Hi there. Kelly MAACDC resident and wheelchair user and MAAC member.
Excellent. So unfortunately, we still don't have quorum, but we do have a Kelly. So So this is great. This is great. So yeah, I want to pause here. I've just been talking straight for like 20 minutes. I wanted to just get a sense of. So basically, Kelly, what I was doing was just going through some of the metrics. What I was hoping to do this during this meeting was have a wide-ranging conversation about the goals for this upcoming year. So folks had shared, folks who are on the call have shared various things: safe accommodations, charging cords across sidewalks, speed cameras, and more education around new protected bike lanes as things that they were concerned about. And kind of once we had heard everybody, I started to share the draft report card, or kind of the 5 metrics that we had, or the MAAC had brainstormed last year, but with new folks coming in, wanted to revisit that, and then hopefully, unfortunately, we can't actually approve it because we don't have quorum, but just wanted to kind of share what we have, and just kind of get thoughts from both from the MAAC and from the community. So yeah, so I'm going to pause here. There are a bunch of other metrics that I could share as well, that didn't make the cut, but I wanted to just pause here and get thoughts from folks.
Hey, Karthik, this is Kelly. I think I came in when you were talking about number 3. And do I understand correctly that we tried to narrow it down to 5? So I'm feeling pretty good about them, but I'm wondering what others think.
Yeah. So, and 5 is also arbitrary. Like that's just sort of like, it could be more, it could be less.
It's a good place to start.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Yeah. What do other folks think about these?
They definitely all make a lot of good sense to me. I think that as you explained them all, they seem all like very important, and some of them are all very relevant to myself as a user as well.
Is there anything so some of these are hard, so we've heard from DDOT that some of these are harder to measure. I think, so we know that we can get the locations of the accessible pedestrian signals. There is no systematic collection of sightline violations around DC, but we have heard of folks who do want to do this on a volunteer basis, of basically collecting like, hey, this is not conforming to DC law. So that's a map that we can hopefully build in conjunction with other people, other volunteers around the community. The centerline miles for high injury network around design speed. DDOT doesn't have this information, but we have. There are some folks that think that they can volunteer here again and kind of look through documents and see if they can nail down the design speed for these various arterial roads, or at least whether or not they're designed to be for 20 miles or less, yes or no. Then again, also, I think the potential left turn conflicts with pedestrians. This is something that I don't know if DDOT is able to get, but this is something that if they can't, then we can again kind of rely on volunteers for collecting this. And then percent of emergency evacuation route, centerline miles without a 24/7 bus lane. We can measure this directly. We know where the 24/7 bus lanes are. So that's kind of big picture. Yeah, big picture, the kind of the state of data. Any more thoughts from folks
if the data on the left turn conflicts isn't available, could we try to get help with volunteers maybe? I mean, I'm just thinking.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. And
Like,
we could start
yeah.
small too, like, because so basically this is something that we can just go and say, okay, these are, we'll focus on this, 5-block radius and say, okay, how many intersections are there in this, and we can kind of list them out, and we can say, yes, this intersection does prohibit left turn conflicts, or it does not. And these are things that I think, I don't want the perfect to be the enemy of the good here. I don't want to say, hey, we can't release a metric until we've gotten all, whatever it is, 7,000 intersections in DC covered. I think we can start with specific areas where we've got we can get some volunteer coverage.
Yeah, and we could focus on the kind of higher volume places.
Mm-hmm.
Just as a place to start, I think it would be helpful.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, so so I think, I think, and what I can do is maybe what we can do for next time. I'm really hoping that we can get quorum next time, where we can actually say, yes, these are the ones that we want to target, and this is our game plan. That would be, and Neha also is also able to potentially dig into these as well. So.
That would be great. In the meantime, maybe there's something we could do over email.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. So I think, so metric 5, we can probably calculate directly. So we can basically overlay the emergency evacuation routes with our bus lane network, and show. And that's something that I've got some mapping skills. No nunchuck skills or computer hacking skills, but I do have some mapping skills.
Okay. We'll work on the other.
That was, if anyone.
Napoleon Dynamite.
Yeah.
We'll get out the chapstick. Sorry.
My lips hurt real bad.
Yes. It's a classic.
So, but yeah, I do have some mapping skills, and I can put those. I can pretty easily do this one, and yeah, potentially some of the others as well. So, so I think that might be a good place. Yeah, so actually, maybe I can continue to open it up for any more comments. And then for next month, I'm hoping that we can get quorum, and then we can actually say, yes, let's do these, or no, let's make some tweaks, and then start to create a plan. Oh, go ahead. If you've got a comment, just go ahead and say it.
Hey, Karthik, it's Peter. Not a comment, just a question. Who from MOTA do you need for a quorum?
So we need 3. 3 of the, but we've got 6 community members, 2 vacant seats, and 2 absences today. So that's where, so we need 3. We've got 2. So
We're just short.
We're just short.
I was just going to offer to reach out to whoever you needed from MOTA, if that's something that's helpful.
Yes, yeah. So I'm gonna. We do have, and yes, that would be great. that would be great. I've pinged MOTA a couple times, and I will follow up with them again. But yeah, I super appreciate it. So I think what we'll do then is, I think, given again that we don't have quorum today, so we're not actually at an official meeting, but if we just kind of open discussion, if anyone else has other words Let me actually just make a couple other notes before kind of last call for comments or questions. We are hoping to, I'm hoping to build this out. We've got the DDOT director confirmed for our April meeting. We're considering this being a hybrid meeting where we'll maintain Google Meet, but we are exploring the possibility of having our in-person, anyone who's able to join in person can do so possibly at the DC Public Library Central Branch, the MLK Public Library on the second floor in the accessibility. They have a whole center for accessibility and a specific conference room that we have talked to folks, and we can get that room. So that's something that we can do. Next month will definitely be virtual, and then once we've got quorum, we can kind of set hybrid or virtual in person, kind of based on what the council wants, and then we can also start to make requests for various people from either DDOT or other agencies to come and present on various topics that we think are important to talk about. So we'll reconvene in March, and hopefully with quorum, hopefully we can kind of finalize our goals and move from there, and then also kind of populate this so we can kind of nail down when our the modality and also our guests for future meetings. So with that, kind of last call for any other comments, questions, concerns that folks have, and then we can break from there.
Hey, Karthik, I just wanted to give a little bit of a impromptu update from the Department for Hired Vehicles.
Ooh, fantastic. Yes, please.
Accessibility Advisory Committee or Council, one of those, that met yesterday. And so for those who have not experienced it themselves, a wheelchair accessible cab service remains a huge challenge in Washington, D.C., with a shortage of vehicles and drivers. And the Department for Hired Vehicles is looking at possible new incentives to address that, but it has been a many years long problem. So the public is welcome to attend those meetings. They can be found on the Department for Hired Vehicles AAC website, and they are every other month. So the next one will be in April. And there was something that came up during that meeting that I wanted to ask or see if we could look into the answer. And that is, there was some discussion about the new bus lanes, which are great for prioritizing bus transit. And someone mentioned, so wanted to find out that the bus lanes, sometimes paratransit vehicles will park to deboard or something, like a person in a wheelchair or a disabled person safely onto the sidewalk. And it was mentioned that they thought paratransit vehicles were not subject to ticketing, as long as they were not parking, but, in active boarding or deboarding. And then the question came up, well, what about wheelchair accessible cabs? Because that is often the same situation. So just wanted to put that out there as maybe something for us to ask our friends at DDOT to look into, and see if there's any guidance or advocacy we need there, just to maintain accessibility for different sorts of transit for folks with disabilities.
Mm-hmm. Yep, wheelchair accessible taxi cabs and paratransit vehicles we want to know if, at least what the regulations are right now and what's being enforced. Yeah, I think that's a great question. Zach, is there any chance that you can ask around to, or if you know the answer to that question?
I don't know the answer to the question off the top of my head, but I can ask around.
Cool. That'd be great.
And there's the Transport DC program. So there is some overlap, and I don't know if they have permissions as well, but it would be good just for vehicles that we know are transporting people with disabilities to have that flexibility for safer boarding and onboarding.
Oh, for sure. And I know Faye, with the Department of For-Hire Vehicles, actually worked on the legislation, but I'll double check. Okay,
great. Great. Thank you so much. There was some discussion, and I think I missed some of the details about some DC-wide, maybe Olmsted planning. And I don't know if that's something that the MAAC wants or should get involved in. So I don't know much about that. So I was hoping maybe others might.
Yes, in fact, actually, I definitely wanted to put you in touch with Peter. Peter, could you, if you're still here, actually, I don't. Yeah, could you do a quick plug? Kelly is definitely someone who I wanted to connect you to.
Yeah, absolutely. So Kelly, Office of Disability Rights is spearheading the effort to update the Olmsted plan for the next 3 years over the course of this year. So this is just, you're on the ground floor of this conversation. We haven't even set new goals, but we want to get that information, the feedback on what's working, what's not working, what should be included going forward. And we already know that transportation is a huge issue. So that is one of the major priorities of the new plan. So we want to incorporate as much as we can into that plan, because it also forces all, I don't even remember how many agencies are involved, but DDOT for sure, and Department of For-Hire Vehicles, and others to coordinate and collaborate on whatever the goals are, and pushes them forward and holds them accountable through the metrics that we set. So yeah, we'd love your participation.
Yeah, please, anything you want to send me on that. I think my email's on the list, but I'm happy to provide it. Anything. And if there's anything that I should read, like the previous plan, like, any context, I'm happy to study up on. So I appreciate it. This is exciting.
Awesome. Yeah, I think I sent Karthik the invite for our first town hall, and I can also share the existing Olmsted plan in the chat.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great. Yeah, and it's definitely something that we're, as a MAAC, hoping to be involved in, and we'll send at least one person to this meeting. Great. Anything else? Anything else that folks wanted to bring up? Okay, so then why don't we adjourn for now, and then next month hopefully we'll have kind of a more action-packed and quorum-filled meeting. I don't know if that's right. A meeting with quorum that we can actually pass some resolutions and ratify some goals and rock it off to some good work this upcoming year. So thanks so much for all who've attended. And with that, we'll close February's meeting, and we'll see you all in March.
Thank you all. Have a good one.
Yep. Take care, everyone.
Bye.